This smells like beer.
Hey, good morning, guys. It's Ben Goheen at the Neighborhood Plumber. This morning, we're out in beautiful Buford doing some preventative maintenance for a customer. He had a friend with some issues, and he does not want to be in that same boat. So we're going to go through here, see what we can uncover. So let's go check it out. Before we go into this house to check things out, I want to make a quick pit stop. We want to get a pressure reading on this plumbing system before we even go inside. It's a 20-plus-year-old home. PRV lifespan is 10 to 15 years. So we want to make sure that this water pressure is good and safe for our customer.
And I got a front spigot right here. So I'm gonna take a pressure gauge that shows thermal expansion with this red dial and also shows the water pressure with that black dial. We're gonna screw this gauge on. Let's see what we're working with. So this water pressure is 60 PSI, which is good, and that means the customer's pressure regulating valve is good. All right, let's get inside and see what we got. All right. Well, this is going to be our first sink. And a couple things I see here is some old 20-plus-year-old poly supply lines, which are no good. These supply lines get brittle, they crack, and one of the big things is during the installation, if you're not using the plastic ring and the poly stiffener, you're going to have blowouts or cracked lines. So preventatively, I'm going to go ahead and recommend some braided no-burst supply lines. And also, we're going to go ahead and clean this P-trap out and make sure that we don't have any potential blockages that are going to cause some issues down the road. And that's something you kind of want to do anyways. Clean your P-traps out every year, every 2 years. The stops look okay under this sink. We're going to need to turn the water off, drain the system, get some supply lines, some tools, and a little bucket to disconnect this P-trap, and we'll get it taken care of. Most people don't know, you know, supply lines do have a lifespan. They're not going to last forever, and there are things that you can do to prevent some major issues or major flooding. What the supply lines do is carry the water from the main plumbing system up to the faucet. So there's always water to it. It's always under pressure. And if one of these things spring a leak, it's going to be moments before it can cause some significant damage. So one thing I like to look for is obviously the age. How old are these supply lines, but also the initial install. So when installing a poly supply line, you're going to have a specific poly ring and a pipe stiffener. And normally the installer just uses the brass compression ring that comes with your stop, which is a big no-no and can cause some serious issue. So before we turn the water off, we're gonna go ahead and check out some of the other locations, see what other things we can uncover. That way we can get a good game plan. We can come up, get some measurements on these supply lines, make sure we get everything we're gonna need, make sure everything's the right length. So let's check out these other locations, and then we'll get to turning the water off. All right, guys, so we took a long hike right into the other room. We're going to do this preventative maintenance on this toilet. A couple of things that I just observed. A lot of corrosion on the escutcheon. This cutoff valve does look like it could be replaced, and this poly supply line also. So we're going to do a new SharkBite Max straight stop. We're going to use a new chrome escutcheon, and we're also going to replace that supply line. So I wanted to get a quick measurement of these supply lines just to kind of have a rough idea of how long we're looking. Doesn't need to be specific. Supply lines come in an array of sizes from 9-inch all the way to 72. Check out Eastman's website and they will have what you need. And we are off. All right, guys, we got the water off. We opened that faucet out front to let some water drain. I'm also going to open this kitchen sink. We're gonna be working upstairs, replacing those supply lines, and I don't wanna have any water up there. So I'm gonna leave this open, and when I open that faucet upstairs, it'll break the vacuum and any water in the system will come out of this faucet, and we won't have a mess under that cabinet. All right, guys, now to make the magic happen. I did want to point out, when I was checking everything, these Eastman straight stops are still in good shape. They're still functioning. But I did proactively bring some SharkBite Max straight stops. So in case these valves were bad, it's very common to find some old gate valves or some old style valves that are leaking after you've exercised them. So these are a great option. Check out sharkbite.com if you guys are interested in replacing your stops. They've got some of the best stops and super easy for anybody to install. So with this SharkBite, remember, a clip will remove the fitting. So SharkBite's designed this cover to prevent anything from hitting that clip and popping off. So super cool that SharkBite's staying ahead of the game. First thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and service this P-trap. I'm gonna disconnect my fittings, drop it into a bucket or into a can, and see what kind of grime we have in there. So I'm gonna get under here and loosen these two nuts. Super easy. So these are just hand tight, no tools really required. We'll loosen this fitting and I'll pop it up there, and then I'll hold this one and loosen this fitting. So as you can see, this P-trap is filled with grime. So I'll show you a little trick I do with that. So this nut right here in this gasket is very important. You do not want to lose this gasket. This is what creates the seal from this 1¼ pipe to this 1½ pipe. This gasket is beveled and it is a reducing gasket. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these paper towels, we're gonna jam them in there. And then they're gonna come out on that side, and I'm gonna pull all of this out. Now we're just gonna wipe it up real good. Any little debris that's stuck in here will get washed down the drain, and that's not gonna harm anything. So got all that crud out of there. All right, now I'm going to wipe down these connections. Got this bevel clean. We've got this connection clean. So now we're gonna put our trap back in. And this is all gonna go hand tight. So we'll start this connection back here. We'll drop our gasket back down. And we'll tighten this fitting here. Same thing, hand tight. Wipe all of this up. And now we're gonna start with these poly supply lines. And I'm very curious if underneath here, we're gonna find that plastic poly ring or we're gonna find that brass compression ring. So I like to use channel locks. I've got a set of 430s and a set of 412s. And we'll make sure that these are on and on. We had turned them off, making sure they were working. Now they're on. This is gonna let any water in this line is gonna drain down through and out our kitchen sink down there. So we're gonna hold this valve. This is called backing. Anytime you break any nuts loose, you wanna back it with something. So I'm just gonna hold this valve while I get this loose. Hold this valve, get this nut loose. Now I can take these off with my fingers. Hallelujah. So that may be a reason why this customer has not had issues with these lines, is they do appear to be installed properly. So this ring is that plastic ring that I was telling you about. You can see if you look that it's cut into this pipe slightly. If you were to get a new SharkBite stop, it's gonna come with a brass ring. And if this brass ring is used, it will cut this pipe and you will have a major catastrophe. So always, when using a poly line, make sure you use a polyferrule or just eliminate all issue and use a braided no burst Eastman supply line. So we're gonna kind of wiggle this supply line loose and get it out of this stop valve. And now you've got to be small and limber to get under here, but I'm gonna flip around. And this faucet's got integrated copper lines, which are fragile, so you do not want to twist these copper lines. So I'm gonna back with my channel locks and we're gonna loosen the poly side. Break that loose. Come over here. So now we've got both our supply lines disconnected. We'll get our new Eastman 16s and get these connected. One thing I like to do is I like to start at the bottom. We'll hand tighten all of these. A lot of people like to peel these tags off, but I always leave them. It gives all the manufacturer information. And should you have any issues, you'll know who to call. But now I've got these all hand tight. Now I'm gonna go and snug these all up. There are gaskets in these, so you don't wanna be as tight as you were with that compression valve. Because of that gasket, you don't wanna cut the gasket. So we're gonna go about a turn past tight. Same thing here, we're gonna go snug it up. Now we're tight, we're gonna go about a turn past tight. Manually start these. Same thing with these, you got that gasket, so we'll go tight and a little tighter. Get it snug, go a little bit tighter. All right, now we've got our trap service, both our supply lines installed. With these old style gate valves, it's not a bad idea to tighten this packing nut. And that's tight, and that's tight. So these packing nuts during turning off, turning on could end up needing a little snug. So if you tighten that nut up right there, if you ever get any leakage around this stem, that will stop that leak. All right, guys, we got this faucet wrapped up. We're gonna move over to the toilet and then we'll get to the other faucets and get this thing wrapped up. All right, guys, so we're gonna do this discussion. We're gonna do a new valve and a new supply line. So I'm gonna kind of be moving around, get in here and work, but I do wanna show how easy it is to replace a supply line just as that preventative maintenance before we get into cutting this valve off. So kind of the same process we did under the sink. Assuming the water is on, we would wanna reach down and shut our valve off, but don't trust that. Flush your toilet, and then listen and make sure you're not hearing water still run through. If that valve is failed, then when you turn it off, it's gonna continue to allow that water to fill up that toilet. And if you go and disconnect your supply line, you're gonna have to deal with that. And we don't want somebody panicking because they don't know what's going on. So I'm gonna reach under here and back this valve, and then we're gonna loosen this top 3/8 poly nut. And just curious if also this was installed right. So let's see if we have that plastic ferrule we were looking for. And we do. So another jiggling, wiggling of that. And we got a little bit of water from this fill valve, but it shouldn't be that much. Now we'll disconnect it from the toilet fill valve. A couple of pointers here. You do not want this top nut to come loose. This is what creates the seal between the tank and the fill valve. And I'll always go through and just make sure it's good and snug, and it is. I've got our new 12-inch supply line. Start and hand tighten. I'm gonna go a little snug tighter. And then we'll come down here and kind of just finesse your supply line to get it to line up. And then we will tighten this. Same thing, there's a gasket in here, gasket here, so hand tighten, and then a snug tighter. I'm gonna leave this disconnected for now because I'm gonna replace this valve in this discussion, but for you supply line replacers, there you go. So now I'm gonna cut this valve off. We just have some basic red cutters. Slide this discussion off. All right, so now that we've got the discussion off, we're gonna clean this pipe so we can get ready to mark our depth and also deburr this copper. And I've got SharkBite's new deburring multi-function tool. It'll actually deburr PEX pipe and copper. It will also work as your insertion depth chart. So on one side of this, you're gonna see SharkBite Max. And just a quick thing to remember is the SharkBite Max. Max is bigger, better. So the SharkBite Max is gonna have the bigger step. And then on the reverse side, you've got the first gen. If you're using the first gen side, it's gonna be the small step. If you're using the SharkBite Max, it's gonna be the big step. So we're working with 1/2-inch copper and we're gonna be using the SharkBite Max. So I'm gonna go to the Max side. I've already cleaned my copper, deburred it. So I'm just gonna use this as my insertion depth. And I'm gonna basically rest it, make sure that we are good. And I'm going to mark it with my Sharpie. So we're gonna go ahead and place our new escutcheon. If you are using a SharkBite Max stop, make sure you don't scratch the pipe when you slide this escutcheon on. So as you notice, this escutcheon slid on really easily and tight. Sometimes they just are such a tight fit that you want to pay attention to not scratch your copper up. That seal is very important on that SharkBite fitting. So I'm going to take my sandpaper and just re-sand that, make sure everything is good and smooth. I like to push, make sure that this pipe is secured and not going anywhere, because we do need this SharkBite fitting to bottom out. I'll rest it, keep it straight and level, and I'll give a little twisting, slow pushing motion, and we are in there. If this ring pulled up against that clip, it could release this fitting, which we don't want. And SharkBite doesn't want it. So they've designed this clip. So this clip will just slide over this and will prevent that from ever happening. So super cool, SharkBite. And now we've got our new stop. We've got our new escutcheon. We're gonna take this off. This is not gonna be used. So if you are a scrapper and like to scrap metal, you can scrap it for brass, or you can throw it in your catch-all. So you want to make sure your clip is up and kind of wrapped around that coupling. If it's dropped down like that, just get it up there and pinch it. But really, it doesn't matter if it falls down. It's just there to protect that. So if it did fall down and something happened, it would push it right back into place. So the water's off. I always like to turn my valve off. That way when I come up here, you know, then I can turn it on, test everything. You never know if there was a hole in this line, you're downstairs or outside. So it's always better to just try to be one step ahead of the plumbing gods and, you know, think about what you're doing. So I'm going to snug this bottom supply line up, and we are all good. All right, guys, we got this toilet preventative maintenance handled. We've got a new escutcheon. We've got a new stop valve straight by SharkBite. We've also got a new supply line. We're going to kind of repeat this same step throughout the house, unless stops don't need to be replaced or escutcheons don't need to be replaced. So let's go check these out and keep it moving. And we're gonna lay this faucet in. All right, guys, we've got everything wrapped up. We're gonna get our water back onto our system. We're gonna blow all the air out through that front faucet, go through, make sure everything is good and leak free, and turn on these fixtures and stops and make sure all is well. We're gonna get this opened up, turn this water back on, bleed some of the air out, close that faucet, and make our way inside to double, triple check everything. We're gonna ease this back on all the way. So we got our air bled out. We're gonna check here at the kitchen first, see if we got any air. A lot of times it happens fast when you get that water back on. So we are good to go there. We're gonna make our way upstairs. So we're gonna reach down here, quarter turn valve. We're gonna ease that on. You heard that? All that noise you're hearing is the air going through the line. I'm gonna let this thing fill up. It'll start to quiet up as soon as all that air is bled out, but that that's air mixed with the water. We don't want that. I always like to fill the toilet up, then flush it, because if not, and there is air in the line, it does make a loud, scary sound that could scare the kids and, you know, make people wonder what's going on. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up on this episode. We've talked about a lot. We've talked about preventative maintenance. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll catch you on the next one.